Have you ever really stopped and thought about how incredible it is that we can pinpoint any single spot on our massive planet? I mean, from the peak of the highest mountain to the exact bench in the park where you meet your friends. How is that even possible? Well, today, we're going to unravel the global address system that makes it all work. Let's get started.
Okay, take a look at this. This is the famous Old Faithful Geyser out in Yellowstone National Park. Now, imagine you're trying to tell a friend how to find this exact spot. You could say, oh, it's in Yellowstone, but that park is huge. How could you give them a precise, can't-miss-it location that works for anyone, anywhere in the world?
And this isn't just about famous landmarks, Think about your everyday life. How do you tell a friend exactly which picnic table to meet you at? Or how does a pizza delivery driver find your front door and not your neighbor's by mistake? You need a system, a reliable way to say, I am right here. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll talk about the basic idea of location. Then, we're going to break down its two key parts, latitude and longitude. After that, we'll see how they combine to mark the spot, and finally, we'll get into the modern magic of GPS. So, let's jump right in.
Okay, part one. What's your location? So before we can find any spot on the globe, we have to agree on a system. It's kind of like finding a street corner in a city. You need to know the street names, right? Well, finding a spot on Earth requires a global grid. It's like the ultimate map legend. So, we basically have two ways of talking about location. On one hand, you've got your local directions. You could tell your friend, hey, I'm 2 blocks north of your house. That works perfectly if they're close by and know the landmark, their house. But what if they're on the other side of the country? That's where the other system is absolutely crucial. Using a coordinate like 44 degrees north and 110 degrees west is like using a universal address that works for anybody, anywhere. All right, let's break down the first half of that universal address. Section 2 is all about latitude. This is the part of our address that answers one simple question. How far north or south are you on the planet? Okay, so here's the main idea. Lines of latitude are these imaginary, horizontal lines that circle the Earth, and they're all parallel to each other. I want you to picture them like rungs on a ladder that you can use to climb up the globe toward the North Pole or down toward the South Pole. They always run side to side.
And the starting point for all of these lines, the big zero, is the equator. The easiest way to remember this is to just think of the equator as a giant belt wrapped right around the middle of the Earth. It divides the whole world into the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and every single latitude measurement starts from there.
Let's look at the most important lines. Right in the middle, we've got the equator, our starting line at 0 degrees. Now, as we travel north, we cross the Tropic of Cancer, then the Arctic Circle, until we get to the very top of the world, the North Pole, at 90 degrees north. And if we go south from the equator, the pattern is basically the same. We cross the Tropic of Capricorn, then the Antarctic Circle, and we end up at the South Pole, at 90 degrees south. Every single place on Earth has a latitude between these two poles. Okay, time for the second half of our universal address. Let's see how this builds. Section 3, longitude. So now that we know our north-south position, we got to figure out our east-west position. And believe it or not, figuring this one out was a huge problem for sailors for hundreds of years. Lines of longitude are basically the opposite of latitude. They're imaginary vertical lines that run from the North Pole all the way down to the South Pole. For early sailors, this was the really hard part. See, they could figure out their latitude by looking at the sun or the stars, but knowing how far east or west they'd gone was almost impossible, which led to tons of shipwrecks. They needed a starting line. The best way to picture this is to think of an orange. If you peel an orange, the sections all meet at the top and the bottom, right? They're widest at the middle, at the equator, and they all come together at the poles. That's exactly how lines of longitude wrap around the Earth. Just like the equator is the 0-degree line for latitude, we need a starting line for longitude. That line is called the prime meridian. By international agreement, it runs right through Greenwich, England, which was a historic hub for astronomy and navigation. So any location is measured as being either east or west of that specific line. And on the exact opposite side of the globe, you'll find the 180-degree line, which also happens to be the international date line. Okay, this can get a little confusing, so I want everyone to try this with me. No, really, stand up. First, for longitude, stand with your hands way up over your head and your feet together. See how your body is long and tall, just like a line of longitude? Now, do the second part of a jumping jack, arms out to the side. That's for latitude. Your arms are horizontal and your body makes a T shape for latitude. Longitude up and down, latitude side to side. Easy, right? All right, you've totally mastered latitude and longitude.
Now for the really cool part. Section 4. X marks the spot. This is where we combine our north-south address with our east-west address to find one single exact point on the map.
Let's use a real example. Imagine we want to find the city of New Orleans, which is at 30 degrees north latitude and 90 degrees west longitude. You take one finger and find that 30-degree north line running side to side. Then you take your other finger and find the 90-degree west line running up and down. Now just slide both fingers along their lines until they meet, and boom, X marks the spot. You just found New Orleans.
And that really is the secret. Just like the quote says, once you have those two numbers, the latitude and the longitude, you have a unique address for any point on the entire planet. It's a simple but unbelievably powerful idea that changed everything: exploration, trade, our whole understanding of the world. So, finding a location on a paper map is pretty cool, but how does your phone do it instantly? Well, that brings us to our final section: GPS. Satellites find you. This is how those old-school ideas of latitude and longitude power the amazing technology we all have in our pockets. So where did this tech even come from? It's actually a pretty wild story. It all started when the US military launched a network of 24 satellites into space, creating this huge constellation just orbiting the Earth. The whole goal was to create a system so soldiers could know their exact location on a battlefield. They called it the Global Positioning System, or GPS. And, lucky for us, it was eventually opened up for everyone to use. So how does it actually work? Well, it's kind of like your phone is playing a game of catch with those satellites. It sends out a signal, basically shouting, "Where am I?" At least 4 of those satellites hear it and send a signal back, which includes the exact time it was sent. Your phone measures how long each signal took to arrive. By knowing its exact distance from at least 4 different satellites, your phone can do some super fast math to figure out the one single point on Earth where you could possibly be. And what does it calculate? Your exact latitude and longitude, all in a split second. And just think about how much we rely on this system every single day. It's not just for maps on your phone. It's built into your family's car, giving turn-by-turn directions. It's in a smartwatch tracking your run. It's what pilots use to fly planes safely across oceans. And it's how you can watch a package travel across the country right to your front door. It all comes back to those satellites calculating your latitude and longitude. So there you have it. From imaginary lines that help sailors cross the seas, all the way to a network of satellites orbiting our planet, you now know the secret to finding any location on Earth. So my question for you is, now that you have this power, what's the first place you're going to look up the coordinates for? Your house? Your school? Maybe even Old Faithful? Thanks for diving into this with me.